Imagine, it's 3:15 a.m. Somewhere in the deep American Southwest, a radar operator notices something unusual. Minutes later, local authorities begin receiving reports. A bright flash, a loud boom, something falling from the sky. By sunrise, the story's over. Roads have been closed, access is restricted, witnesses have been turned away. Whatever came is gone. Not because it disappeared, but because someone picked it up. The question is, who? Because whether we're talking about a drone, a satellite, or something genuinely unexplained, someone always arrives first. Someone secures the wreckage, the technology, and decides what information becomes public. And according to some claims, the people doing that may not always be the government. They might be private companies with secure facilities and enormous defense contracts. Tonight we're going to be asking something more practical. If something extraordinary crashed tomorrow, who would get there first? And what would happen next? First, I want to clear up a big misconception here. A lot of people seem to think that crash retrieval programs are somehow odd. If a drone, missile, or advanced aircraft crashes, recovery teams move immediately to pick it up. No government's going to leave advanced tech just lying around, because technology is power. So it would actually be much more odd if no retrieval were actually done at all. So the question isn't whether these retrieval programs exist. It's really what they've recovered. And of course, we can't talk about retrieval without talking about Roswell. In case you've been living under a rock, in July of 1947, something crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. Most people already know the arguments. Weather balloon, Project Mogul, flying saucer, government cover-up. But for the purposes of this story, what crashed is almost secondary. What's important is what happened afterward. Recovery teams arrived almost immediately. Materials were collected, information was controlled, witnesses' accounts were conflicted, and the official explanations changed. And perhaps most importantly, the debris disappeared into a system the public could no longer see. Whether it involved a classified balloon, a misunderstood event, or something more exotic, it established a pattern that would define crash retrieval discussions for decades. Objects come down, recovery teams arrive, information enters a black box, and from that moment forward, we're all forced to rely on whatever information emerges from whoever picked it up. Most people imagine these classified programs as giant underground vaults filled with secrets. It's actually a lot less dramatic than that. But in some ways, it's actually much more effective. In today's world, things are compartmentalized. One group knows one piece, another group knows another. There are very few individuals that get to see the entire picture. Imagine you have a 10,000 piece puzzle, and everyone only receives 3 pieces. No one's really lying. No one's really hiding any information. They just don't see everything. If something is recovered, the transportation team moves it, the scientists analyze it, the engineers study it, and the security personnel protect it. The result is a system capable of maintaining secrecy, not because everyone's involved, but because almost no one actually is. And according to some whistleblowers, that's exactly how things are being operated. So if something is recovered, where does it go? A military base? Maybe. But who actually possesses the expertise needed to analyze these systems? That answer is leaning more and more towards private industry. Modern defense technology is developed through partnerships between government agencies and major contractors. The stealth aircraft that changed aerial warfare, advanced radar systems, hypersonics. If something extraterrestrial were recovered, would it remain in government hands, or would it be delivered to the engineers already building the nation's most advanced technology? Of all the companies that are connected to this, one name appears more than any other: Lockheed Martin. Specifically, the Skunk Works division, the same organization responsible for aircraft like the U-2, SR-71, and F-117. Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid publicly stated that he believed Lockheed Martin sought access to certain materials connected to UFO-related investigations. Later whistleblower allegations would further fuel the speculation. Lockheed Martin has of course never confirmed these allegations, but the question remains, why does Lockheed appear so frequently in these stories? It's probably because if the government wanted the world's best aerospace engineers examining some unusual materials, they would be near the top of the list. Then there's Battelle Memorial Institute. Unlike Lockheed, Battelle is not really in the mainstream discussions, because most people have never heard of it. But they've spent decades conducting highly sensitive government research. Its fingerprints appear throughout American scientific and defense history. Within UAP circles, its name often emerges as a possible player in alleged retrieval. Again, there's no public evidence confirming these claims, but its name appears often enough to become noteworthy. Because if you wanted to fly something under the radar but still have the people capable of handling these materials, Battelle would fit that description. For decades, these retrieval stories existed largely in rumor and books. Then, former intelligence officer David Grusch stepped forward. Grusch alleged that he had been informed of long-running retrieval and reverse engineering efforts involving recovered objects. Importantly, he did not claim to have personally worked for any such program. His allegations sparked congressional hearings, media coverage, and public debate. But regardless, the conversation changed. They were no longer confined to internet forums. They had entered congressional hearing rooms. So after decades of all this going on, we're really left with about three possibilities. The first is probably the simplest. Everything that ultimately traces back to conventional technology, whether it be foreign aircraft or drones or misidentifications. No extraordinary discoveries, just secrecy surrounding national security. Secondly, some recovered objects may generally defy immediate explanation, not because they're extraterrestrial, but because the technology occasionally advances farther than expected. And lastly, at some point, somewhere, something was recovered that challenged existing assumptions. Not necessarily alien, not necessarily impossible, but extraordinary. And if that happened, would the public immediately learn about it? Or would it enter the same backroom system that every technology enters? Study first, discuss later. Maybe much later. So maybe there's nothing super crazy going on here. That's entirely possible. But one fact remains. When something valuable falls from the sky, someone always recovers it, someone always studies it, and someone controls access. And that means the real mystery was never whether objects crash. It's what happens when they do. Who gets there first, who gets to peek inside, and whether the rest of us ever learn what was found. Because if history teaches us anything, it's this. The race for knowledge begins long before the public hears the story, and by the time the newspaper headlines appear, the most important decisions have already been made.